Who's ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bills Squad show starts now.
And welcome in. This is the Bill Squad Show. Jeremy White with the ever-informative and entertaining pair, Joe Marino and Jerry Ostrowski. I'm starting giving you guys compliments, titles, that kind of thing as we, settle into a comfort zone here. So we're back for another episode to talk all things Buffalo Bills with you. Today on the show, the cook is in the kitchen. I know you might be asking, is this the final conversation about James Cook? Maybe. We maybe can't promise that, but Cook with the Bills at mandatory minicamp, of course. Keon Coleman's transformation that might be more than just physical. The way that Coleman's talking has a lot of other people talking. Jerry wants to dig into pressure packages and what the Bills are doing there. Joe's got a piece up about Cole Bishop with the herd mentality. So lots and lots to dig into. Some other NFL camps along the way as mandatory minicamp season is in full swing. And, here we go. So, gentlemen, I forget what the predictions all were, but James Cook, at the end of the day, he shows up and gives a relatable reason that I feel like people thought was kind of funny, and you can't really poke holes in it. Quote, I like my money. Doesn't want to get fined $17,000 and counting each and every day he would have missed. So Cook is there, and the issue is done, right?
Why does it change anything?
Right.
I mean, honestly, why does it change anything? I mean, he showed up, and he basically showed up for exactly what he said. He didn't want to pay the $100,000 fine. And if you're worried about how much money you make, it would make sense that you don't want to give it back to the organization, right, by not being at a mandatory event. But it's just funny to me. It's, I made the comment. It's like just by showing up to minicamp, all of a sudden, it's like we want to go Teddy KGB from Rounders, and it's like gives the man his money, right? It's like, to me, this doesn't change anything. We're in the same situation we've been in. We're going to be at an impasse as far as what he feels his value is, what the franchise feels his value is. Joe's done a wonderful job of breaking some stuff down that he can get into as far as play percentages and all that kind of stuff. And it was funny. That to me was the most interesting part of his press conference was he alluded to, hey, I can't control percentages. I just go out there when I'm called to go out there, which showed me anyway that he is very well listened up on to maybe what the negatives are of why many feel he shouldn't get the contract that he wants. So it was fine. I mean, he'll be at training camp, he'll be at St. John Fisher, and he'll do exactly what we want, to have happen, which is play a great season and then let the cards fall where they may.
Well, first of all, Jerry, hard to recognize you here, all clean shaven. Where's the beard, man? I thought we had qualifications to be on the panel. Your name had to begin with a J, and you had to have a beard. And now you're only checking half the boxes here. So
summertime in Tulsa is not conducive to a beard.
All right. I'll take it. I'll take that. I think it is fair to ask the question: does it actually change anything? I think where I enjoyed listening to James Cook was for him to say things like, I'm a leader. We want to win the Super Bowl. If we're going to do that, I have to be here with my teammates. And so it was cool to kind of hear those things come out of his mouth. He also didn't have to meet with the media. And so I give him some credit for doing that. So I think those are good steps, but I mean, is he going to hold in come training camp? He initially said no. And then by the end of the press conference, he kind of changed his mind. He's like, well, we'll see, we'll see what happens when we get there. So I hope that everyone realizes that the best path forward is for him to just play this season, have a great year, and then deal with it after the year. And whether that's getting something done in Buffalo or somewhere else, he's got some things to validate, and here's the opportunity to do that.
Should mention, by the way, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So presenting sponsor FanDuel. Yeah, all right, he plays out the season, and then the conversation next year is about where Cook actually would have leverage. But the leverage would be that he could leave, right? It wouldn't be, is there controversy or drama? It would just be the Bills making a decision and Cook making a decision. Do you think by the time we get to next year, we're having a similar conversation? Because he will have a year, provided he doesn't get hurt. He'll probably have a good year in this offense. And then it'll be about, what the number is, what he thinks it should be and what they think it should be.
I think the $15 million question is, does anybody else feel he deserves that level of money? I think that's the biggest thing, and that's how I believe this negotiation will go. For Buffalo to retain James Cook, it's going to depend on the rest of the league. If there's teams out there that believe that he's worth that type of money, then he's, more than likely he's gone. But if negotiations are cold across the league and there's a lot of other, if the other franchises feel the same way that Buffalo does, and you look at play percentage and all that type of stuff, lack of third down effectiveness, as far as pass protection and those types of things, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have an opportunity to retain him, because let's really get into this. If you're going to go ahead and give James Cook that type of money and bring him in, you got to run a similar type of thing that the Bills do, which is you don't expect a lot out of your backs in pass protection. You're sending them out in pass routes and that type of stuff. So if you need a guy that's going to be very, very reliable in pass protection, you're not going to take him. And honestly, he's got to sharpen up some of the pass catching stuff and the route running stuff. So he's got this year to do that, and we'll see if it happens. But, as far as Cook's negotiations go, I think it's going to depend on the rest of the other 31 teams. And does anybody feel that he deserves that money?
Well, and I think Brandon Beane might welcome the opportunity to say, here's our offer. Go see if you can get what you want. And if you don't, this will be here waiting for you. And I think that might go well for Brandon Beane. One other thing for James Cook, at least, if we do get to next year and this is unresolved, which is kind of my expectation, once again, the expectation for the salary cap is for it to go up. I'm seeing most projections between a $15 to $20 million increase. And so now you're talking about a salary cap that's into the $290 million range. And if you do the percentage of cap thing, which I think is important, well, 5% of a 295 is more than 279, right? I'm not a math guy. I'm not going to try to figure that out on the fly, but I think that would give him more in terms of that being an appropriate number. Then if it is about percentage of cap, though, then he might not like where it lands. But I think there's a lot of that would be the win for James Cook to me. Is 15 million on a 295 cap's different than a 279 cap.
Yeah, one thing about this is we got to comment on the YouTube channel. You can comment anytime you want. Bishop writes in, we can still franchise tag him next year if we want, as well as if we got the cap space. To which I would say, looking at the way the Bills operate, they just got 4 guys done this offseason ahead of schedule. Well, whatever, on schedule, but before they hit the open market in Bernard, Benford, Rousseau, and Shakir. And I think if you're a betting man, the idea that they're going to let Cook blow up for a big number and then pay him that raise you're talking about, Joe, I feel like I'm much more likely thinking they're not going to re-sign him. He won't be back. The franchise tag to me is off the table because it's too much of a cap hit. And if they want a contract where there's cap savings and they can move the money in such a way that he fits in nicely, when's the right time to do that? Now. I don't think that they're not sold on what he is. I think it's more about how he's not everything he needs to be to get that kind of contract. The Bills have signed guys ahead of schedule and before they've really broken out before, and I think they would do it for Cook if he was exactly what they wanted him to be. Instead, they'll just use him for what he's worth, and I think they thank him and probably send him on his way.
Yeah, he's not falling into the mold, right? It's just not shaping up that way where the Bills, their appetite is to get ahead of things, project a little bit and be comfortable with it, which is not happening with James Cook, which also didn't happen with Tremaine Edmonds, who left for the big money in Chicago.
Because you got to look at it this way as well. I mean, everybody's saying, well, what if he has a big year? What if he does? He's already had very, very productive years. He's already led the league in touchdowns. He's had 1,000-yard rushing seasons. There's really not much more that James Cook can do to convince anybody in the front office anyway to say, yeah, well, my gosh, we got to pay him because of this. So that's, I mean, it's not great. I mean, you want James Cook a part of your football team because of how well he runs the ball in his own scheme, but there's not much more he can do. And This is going to come down to what do other teams believe his value is, and can the Bills stay in contention because maybe, just maybe, the demand for him isn't what he thinks it will be.
What happens? Let me ask you this. What happens if this year plays out? Let's say James Cook has a very similar year to the ones he's had the last 2. What's going to happen when he signs with the Kansas City Chiefs? You know what I mean? Like,
right,
tell me that could happen. That could happen. We're going to lose our minds.
Is that a good test? Because we can all play that game. What if player X went to the Chiefs. Is that the proper test for valuing a player? In some cases, I want to say it could be, but for running back, I don't know. That I wonder if the situation is just a little different.
But tell me if I'm wrong, Joe, because obviously your film study is much more vast than mine is. But Kansas City wants to utilize their backs in the passing game quite a bit as well, do they not?
They do, but literally, Sean McDermott literally said it. We drafted James Cook to be a pass catching back, and he became this thing that he's become. Like that was what he was in college, like the pass catcher. That was the whole thing. And now he's become a lot more than that. But I still think there's a lot of meat on the bone for the Bills to get him more involved in the passing game, to be honest.
One thing about Cook, I like to sometimes bring up the stats on Cook. Some of the stats, there's some advanced stats. He's got some pretty nice numbers. And I found one, which was yards after contact per attempt last year. Where did Cook slot in at yards after contact per attempt? Because we all know the Bills' offensive line is great, and they sometimes create massive holes for him. He was tied for second. There's a four-way tie for second, and not surprising, Derrick Henry's number one, and then it's Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Cook, Josh Jacobs, and I forget the fourth one. I'm sorry, but he's done a great job at what he has become. And it's kind of ironic that, like you said, Joe, they draft him to be a pass catcher. Turns out he's best off as a, first and second round guy that can be a slashing zone runner. And the only kind of running back they might pay $15 million is a guy that's both.
Well, and to further your point there, Jeremy, his yards before contact numbers are very good, but I think he's also a little bit responsible for that with how his footwork is phenomenal in the zone game. And because of the way that he presses the line of scrimmage, he helps widen those lanes. And the Bills have kind of tailored this entire rushing infrastructure around his strengths, which is phenomenal, right? And I think they'd adjust it to different backs if they had to. But I think you can look and say, well, the scheme does a lot of this for him, and that's true. But I think he also, helps kind of widen those holes and reduce the amount of contact that he faces because of how he navigates some and negotiates some of those zone opportunities.
So let me ask you this. If we drafted James Cook to be a pass catching running back, why then are we not? Why do we trot Ty Johnson out there as more in those situations than we do James Cook?
So because when Josh Allen sees a defense and says pressure's coming and he has to keep the back in to block, there's got to be a level of confidence with that. And okay. I think there's also something to the chemistry that Josh has with Ty Johnson when, hey, okay, we're going to keep you in. You don't need to go in. You're going to leak into space. I know where you're going to be. There's a lot more confidence, I think, in how that plays out. I don't think James couldn't do it, but I think there's more confidence in how Ty Johnson operates in those capacities, although there is a notable difference when they actually have to execute the blocking assignments, which, as we've established, is pretty low number of times based on the way the Bills want to play offense. They trust that Josh Allen can negotiate a free runner. Like that's not only do they want to maximize their eligibles out in routes, which would be 5, but there's also a level of trust that Josh Allen can figure it out when there is a free runner. They're comfortable living in that world, and that's why I think the Bills are less when it comes to keeping in running backs to pass block.
So if you're a good defense coordinator and you've done your homework, every time that you see James Cook out there in a third down situation, you bring pressure.
100%.
Yeah.
That's the limitation.
Right.
Yeah, the limitation, because some might say, and we're seeing some of the comments about Cook as a pass catching back. As a pass catcher, it was 2 years ago he had all those drops. His drop percentage last year went way down. He did improve, and that's something he got better at, but that's not the problem. And, Joe, if you're talking about Ty Johnson in that role, how good is Ty Johnson when they keep him in to protect?
He's sufficient. He can. He's certainly. I don't know that he's not Kyron Williams in pass pro, but he does a nice job. And I think the same thing was true about Latavius Murray the year before, where obviously the wheels fell off the guy. He had no juice, but he could stay in and pass pro and get the job done in those situations. Then occasionally, he goes out for a pass and kind of some crazy stuff happened with him too.
Well, he better because he was huge.
Yeah.
Here's just a fun little question. What running backs in the league would be worth $15 million for this job for the Bills? Is Bijan on the list? Is Bijan good enough in pass protection?
100%.
Bijan, I like watching clips of Bijan sometimes. He's a warrior back there in pass protection. Like he takes
dog.
Yeah. And elusive and a pass catcher. So, so it's not like it's this role that the Bills offense has, the right player, you would very much sign up for giving them the kind of money James Cook wants. It's just James Cook's not that guy.
Well, I also wonder if the Bills want a running back to do that, right? I think they like having the specialized skill sets and having multiple guys work together to do the whole thing. And so that's the other layer to this where, I mean, Sean McDermott has come out of his mouth where he said it is not good for one back to carry the load. He wants to spread that out. And I thought early on in the McDermott area, they kind of struggled to get more than one back going in a meaningful way. They got 3 going last year in a meaningful way, and I think they like that.
We'll find out if he does hold in. I don't think so. I think we're going to see him at training camp. One small thing I would wonder is if they hold him out of the preseason, maybe almost as a favor to him if he doesn't want to play in the preseason, because if you're playing without that safety net of future guarantees and you're a running back, you might want to say, like, listen, I'm happy to be here when the games matter, but if he wants to sit in the preseason, I feel like that'd be a show of good faith on their part if they just let him, bow out for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the same Josh Allen half of game 2 situation, but yeah, I mean, we don't need to see any James Cook in preseason.
Yep.
I feel that way about a lot of players on that roster.
Yeah. All right. When we get back, we're going to talk a lot about Keon Coleman today, digging into a lot of Coleman. A couple weeks ago, there's the picture. He looks bigger. It's year 2. He spoke this week about his game last year, and the coach and the GM both talked about Coleman. So what we're seeing from him, whether it's a different approach, a different attitude, Coleman very honest about his first season, and we're going to dig into it. Coming up next on the Bill Squad Show. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. Major momentum shifts and can't miss moments. And whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Pacers up 2-1, maybe pulling the huge upset. FanDuel's making it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So which players show up in the biggest moments? Maybe you like Tyrese Halliburton on points on the over, or what would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how things are unfolding. If you've got a read on who's heating up, you could get a $200 in bonus bets added to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Keon Coleman turning heads at Bill's minicamp, in part because of what he's doing on the field, and he looks good here coming into year 2. But it's really more about what he's saying, guys. And maybe there's a physical transformation. He wants to play differently, play stronger, get out of breaks and all that. But how do you feel about the approach he's got coming in? He was very, very honest about his own game, and I mean, flat out said, "You know what I see? When it's trash, you got to be better." His own game last year, talking about how there were times he watches himself and he thinks, not good enough. That's not good enough for me. And he went on to say, I demand greatness of myself. So what do you take away from Coleman's approach here in year 2?
No, I think it's refreshing. We thought that Keon Coleman was, far along as far as maturity for his age, and comments like this show that to me. I think he takes this very, very serious. I understand I didn't have a great first year, but, there was this and I had the injury. I mean, he takes full responsibility for his work. And I think that's something that's very, very refreshing in the NFL because you don't see this very much. Now, as we all know, everything he did was not trash. I mean, there was a lot of really good things that he did. And some of this is just, playing to the crowd and making sure that the fan base understands, you're serious about these things. Up until the wrist injury, he did do some good things. But the thing about Keon to me, and this goes to his, supposed body transformation, bulking back up, getting stronger. And like he said, there's really no secret to it. You want to get bigger, you go lift weights. It's not real hard. I think Keon got a little bit caught up in the moment last year, listening to the outside noise, people talking about he couldn't separate, he wasn't fast enough, and he did all these things to try to become this, this receiver that's fluid, that can run go routes and all that stuff. And that's not what makes Keon Coleman great. He's a bully. I mean, he's a former basketball player that can go up and high point the football, catch it in traffic. That's what he does well. Play physical with cornerbacks. And I think in this deal where he got caught up in the noise, He tried to be something he wasn't. And he went back and looked at the tape and said, you know what? I don't like what I see. I'm going to go back to what I do well. That's where you get the bulked up frame. That's where you go back to being physical. And I want to see that out of him. And I think if he goes and masters what he does well, then the other stuff comes. But you got to be who you are. And it's refreshing to me anyway that he is going back to his roots and saying, you know what? We're going to go back to Keon that got drafted in the second round and what they saw out of me that they liked, and not trying to be something he's not. If you're an old vet, you can reinvent yourself. You know, you can cover up your weaknesses and emphasize your strengths. Young guys can't really do that. They got to be true to who they are. And I'm glad to see this out of Keon.
Yeah, I think a lot about just the situation that Keon Coleman stepped into, and I'm sure that's a lot to deal with as a rookie that really hadn't committed to playing football on a full-time basis. That, was a year or so beforehand. And he steps into this Bills offense where Josh Allen comes out and says, yeah, this is the receiver I wanted. You've got all the vacated targets, right, with Diggs and Davis and those guys walking out the door. Yeah, guys like Jeremy White on WGR talking about receivers all the time, and
a lot of pressure,
right? A lot of pressure to step in as a 21-year-old, feeling like there's this big opportunity to make it happen. And I think it was probably a very valuable year and a lot of good that he went through that can set him up for a lot of success moving forward. And that's been one of my favorite parts of this mandatory camp so far, was listening to Keon Coleman on Wednesday afternoon. And he came across as honest, as motivated, as self-aware. I love that he was kind of given the opportunity to lean into his youth and say, hey, when Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have been talking about you this offseason, they've been very deliberate about saying, hey, he's still young. And Keon's like, I don't care, man. It's either good or it's bad. So it sounds like he's got a great mindset. And, I've even enjoyed a lot of the route running videos that have come out of Keon Coleman. I feel like there's a lot more fluidity in and out of breaks and a lot less extra steps and throttle down. So I feel like there's a lot of good momentum, and I'm getting a little bit excited here about Keon.
How about the difference in his role from college to the pros? Because one of the biggest things about Coleman, the talking points about Coleman, is how he would be used. Joe, I feel like on a previous episode, did we have a conversation what would be best for Coleman versus what the Bills are asking of Coleman? And any player might have an opinion of how they are best used. And that's not something we've heard Coleman ever talk about. Like, well, I should be doing this or this instead. How different is the role they have him in versus the role he has played his career playing a receiver?
Well, I think there's probably a good argument to be made that he can be optimized as like a power slot receiver. Because with Keon, it's all about leverage, and he's a big, strong, physical dude, and he needs to position his body where defensive backs have to play through him to get to the football, right? He's a good athlete. He's not a very explosive straight line athlete, but he's a good overall athlete in terms of body control, which is very paramount in route running and playing the receiver position. But point being, in the slot where you're afforded a little bit more space to operate, your ability to establish that leverage is easier, right? And so that's where he can be optimized. But at the same time, he's probably most valuable to the Bills if he can be the true boundary presence as an X receiver to win on the line of scrimmage, to make teams pay for clouding the middle of the field and really kind of get those safeties to cheat over a little bit, and you open up the middle of the field. And, that's where the most meaningful throws in the NFL happen. The highest EPA throws in the league are middle of the field throws. And so, that's the vision. But, I think Keon would be more productive in the slot, but I'm not sure that's where he provides the most value to the Bills.
Does that start to explain, though, when he talks about wanting to be more efficient in routes, is that he's running a different set, or he's got to win in not necessarily different ways, but there are finer things to tune up that he might not have been doing to this point in his professional football career?
Yeah, the press coverage component of what he's deals with and is going to have to deal with in the role that he fills with the Bills. I mean, it's a different ballgame. He's going to have and has had heavyweight battles on the perimeter where, teams are not afraid of his ability to run by him. They're willing to crowd him at the line of scrimmage, give him contact early, and really just throw off the timing. And, if he's number one on a progression and Josh starts his eyes there and he's all, crossed up with the corner and press coverage trying to get in his route, Josh has got to move off of that, and so Keon's ability to develop his release package, and to win and to be able to get into those route stems with the right timing, that's going to keep him on the menu longer for Josh. And so, yeah, I think that those initial steps, how he gets into those routes, how he can stack and create that leverage right away is a huge part of where he needs to develop. And that'll lead to more opportunities for him.
But I also liken his ability to win and press kind of like defensive linemen using power to speed or speed to power. I think that if Keon establishes himself as that physical wideout, which we all know he is, it'll make it easier to win with moves and speed once he establishes that he's a bully. Because when DBs have to set their feet because they have to play against power, that's when you can beat him with speed and moves.
Yeah.
So I think that he needs to go ahead and really embrace what he is, beat those guys up, and then the other stuff will come. It's a lot similar to a guy that bull rush, and then he hits you with the club swim or whatever. It's very similar to me.
Keon Coleman, year 2. Do you guys feel like just by seeing what he had to say this week at minicamp, you see a player that's coachable? I mean, his coach and his GM both kind of called him out in a way that it wasn't exactly drama. And of course, like, he would have known that stuff, but it's not often we get that kind of public, a little disappointing down the stretch. And like, he's already responded in a what seems to be a pretty positive way.
I look at it as going back and playing basketball for Izzo. If you're going to play for Izzo at Michigan State, you better be coachable and you better be able to take coaching. And if Izzo has nothing but great things to say about Keon Coleman, that's all I need to hear, because that's an old school hoops coach that demands a lot of his players. And if he can play for him and be glorified for it, there's no problems with him in coaching. I think that's something that he does very well.
Yeah, I get that impression as well.
He made the Pro Football Focus all breakout offensive team. So it's not just Bills fans noticing or expecting something. Coleman had plenty of fans in the draft. In this offense, sometimes we talk about who's going to get the ball. Everybody eats. So if you could put a level on it, like, you want Keon Coleman to accomplish what this season? If you want to make it a number, if you want to make it a reliability, something intangible, what is a good season when it's over for Coleman?
I have such a hard time with this. And you can apply this to even Dalton Kincaid, where it's like, what production thresholds gonna define that they had the season that labeled them the player that they were supposed to be for the Bills? And I don't know that the raw production is going to tell the story. I think with a guy like Keon Coleman, it's going to come down to, was he reliable when he was asked to make a play? And you can convince me Keon Coleman's going to get 90 targets this year. You can convince me 70. You can convince me 60. I would believe you. But as he proves himself and gains the trust of Josh Allen, he'll get more opportunities. And so it'll take on a life of its own. But I think it'll be measured in how reliable he is, more so than, all right, he had 70 for 1,009 touchdowns.
I think so. I think when you look at young players, you got to look at progression from one year to the next. Are they getting better? Is it tangible? Can you see it? And I think, to me, that's the biggest thing with young guys, and which tells me whether it's a successful season or not. And I think, to tie in with what Joe said, if Josh Allen is going to him in big situations and third downs and red zone, and he's getting the opportunities, that's showing us that he's doing the right things. And to me, Keon's skill set is a perfect match for what Josh does. I mean, Josh being who he is and extending plays and everything, I think Keon is the guy that can really do great things for him. So hopefully, anyway, it makes me feel good that he's going back and embracing what he is, and that's big and physical, and it's going to try to establish himself once again that way. And, if he's better this year than he was last year, I don't want to put numbers on it. I want to see it. And if I can see those things, then to me, that's a success.
It's Joe Brady that's got to find a way to fit all these pieces together. And, it's still everybody eats, right? Whoever does the job, as long as they go 1-0. Brady likes to say that. Will the arrival of some speed elsewhere on the roster help him? Because, Joe, you said they're not afraid of him and corners aren't afraid of getting beat. Would the defense, having to respect the speed of Elijah Moore or Josh Palmer, maybe create more room for Coleman out there?
Yeah, it certainly helps, right? You can lift coverage and draw it away. And the thing about, I think, so many different things schematically, and we get excited about, what it's going to free up. what this really when anything frees up in football is a one-on-one opportunity, right? Like, everyone think you're going to blitz and you're going to just run at the quarterback. No, you're creating a one-on-one matchup that people have to win. And so I think the way that Elijah Moore or a speed element to the offense can help Keon Coleman is making those one-on-one battles better and more advantageous, and potentially having a little bit more room to operate. But he still has to be able to win one-on-one. And I mean, it certainly sounds like he's doing what he needs to do to position himself to maximize those chances.
You know, it's exactly what I was going to say. I think that the biggest thing for Keon Coleman is the players around him in that room are better. They don't have to ask him to do things that he's not great at. With having Elijah Moore and Joshua Palmer and guys that can stretch the field and do those things, now you can get Keon doing the things that he does well. And so he'll be better just by the room being better. And they don't have to ask him to do stuff that maybe he's not great at.
We talk a lot about quarterbacks from like a year 1 to year 2 jump. Jerry, how about just any player in the league? Year 1, you're a rookie. Year 2, you don't know everything, but is it night and day? You feel so much more comfortable coming back for a second season?
Yeah, definitely. There's nothing you haven't seen. You've seen it all. You've experienced camp, mini camp, training camp. You've gone through the preseason. You've played against the top players at this sport from across the world. I mean, there's nothing you haven't seen. So you're much more comfortable in what you're doing. And yeah, that's a big deal.
Keon Coleman entering year 2. Can he be the breakout star the Bills, well, maybe are hoping for? One quick thing we were going to get to, Jerry, you sent us a link from Dan Graziano. This kind of ties into the Keon conversation. Does Josh Allen have to be the MVP again for the Bills to win the Super Bowl? Does he have to have like an MVP caliber season? And we'll probably dig into this, future shows about what Allen might do this season. But do you feel like the Bills have successfully done enough on offense to need a little less from Allen in the hero standpoint? Like, we've got other receivers that have been swapped out, and continuity, I would imagine, helps a lot as well. Does he have to be the MVP for the Bills to win the Super Bowl?
I don't think he has to be the MVP, but I think, he's definitely got to put the cape on every now and then. The difference between old Josh in this season, he won an MVP playing well within himself. Now, he made some great plays. Let's not forget, like, the huge run against the Chiefs and some of the things he's done, and even almost extended the playoff streak with a just amazing throw that was dropped by Kincaid, right? So I don't think that he necessarily has to be Superman for 4 quarters, but it's what he does. And he takes things over sometimes, and it's amazing his ability to sense when it has to be. But no, I don't think he has to win the MVP, but he definitely will have to do some things to help the offense, and I'm sure he'll be able to do that.
With the emergence of players like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and you've seen other teams try really hard to get those types of players, so much so that guys like Trey Lance are number 2 pick in the draft, or Justin Fields, or Caleb Williams, these types of guys have received the opportunities that they've had. One thing that I've realized in this entire evolution with the quarterback position is that, let's say that there's 40 dropbacks a game. 30 of those dropbacks, every quarterback should do the exact same thing, right? Do those, run the play, run the offense, go through your progression, throw it to the guy that's open, right? It's the 10 plays a game that separate Josh Allen from the 15th quarterback or the 20th quarterback in the NFL. And so the point that I'm making here as it relates to Jeremy's question is that, does Josh Allen have to be the MVP for the Bills to win the Super Bowl? And how much will he have to put the cape on? The answer to that is really tied to how does the scheme and the play calling and the execution around him work at a high enough level to minimize, okay, if there's 10 plays a game where he has to be special, maybe it's only 8 or 7 because, well, we had the right call. The guys ran the right routes. They got open. Josh made the right throw. Like, I think there's a relationship between how good things are around him to what Josh Allen has to do to keep the offense moving and points going on the board. And so my reason for optimism for Josh having to maybe do a lot less of the hero type stuff is that the continuity on offense is as good as any team in the league with the play calling as well. And I think you made the right upgrades with Palmer and Moore to give yourself more separation. So the more Josh can just run the play, the less he's going to have to do the special stuff that we get excited about.
But I also think Graziano's comment was based that there is still a small camp across the country that believes without a wide receiver 1 that Josh has to be Superman. And I think if you study the roster and study the style of play calling and what the Bills do, because there's still, like you say all the time, Joe, there's still a camp that believes this is a passing team. And we're probably the furthest thing from a passing team. But yeah, I think there's that small camp that still feels that Brandon Beane hasn't done enough at the wide receiver position. And, we'll see.
The Bill Squad Show. When we return, we're going to dig into the other side of the football and what the Bills are doing defensively. Got a couple of players saying some things that have Jerry and Joe excited about what this defense could become. That's coming up next on the Bill Squad Show. Hey, say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. The sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy place. If you haven't seen one of these, they're really impressive. Touchscreen, visual, really cool. Went to a friend's house. They had one and had us thinking we have one. Need a bigger one because with so much stuff going on, there's T-ball practice, there's everything. What's going on today? Check your Skylight Calendar. It's all there. If you miss plans because they're buried in some digital calendar, it's not written down, assigning chores, lists, groceries, everything. It is really, really cool, really useful. You can see your whole week calendar clearly on a 15-inch HD screen. They have bigger ones too to help you stay focused and less overwhelmed. So right now, Skylight's offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. So we're going to dig into the defensive line and the defense as a whole, what the Bills are doing, because some comments from minicamp that are kind of, this is the most we get to see out of what the defense is going to be, how it's going to be different. And we know they've overhauled their front four. We know they've added to their secondary. And the coaching changes, the scheme changes are what we're really going to dig into here. So a couple things. Terrell Bernard was talking about Ryan Nielsen, one of the Bills, one of the Bills coaches, and what he's been doing and how they're bringing the defense together. I'll pass things over to Jerry here because he came today ready to talk about this, really excited about this development with the Bills and what it all means.
No, I think the addition of Nielsen's been really, really interesting, and I think it starts with the fact that they've got him coaching the defensive line, and I know he's a special assistant to the defense, but it's obvious he's running that group up front. And now we get word that he's actually coaching pressure packages with the defense, and not just the defensive line and how they run stunts. And there's some really good videos out there showing them running stunt drills inside. And when we talk stunts, that's two defensive linemen, sometimes three, maybe add a linebacker, how they blitz. You always have a penetrator, which is the guy that goes first, and a looper, who's the guy that goes second. And that could be between a tackle and a defensive end, a tackle and a nose, and whoever goes first and second, that's how they tag them. But there's specific ways to run those things. And the way you run them, the penetrator has to pick the offensive lineman so they can't switch it off. So there's got be a little bit of unselfishness there for those to work well. And Nielsen's working those things. Then he's working with the defensive or the linebackers and talking about blitz theory and everything else. So it's obvious to me, and I'm curious if we're starting to maybe see a little bit of the blueprint of how this defense is going to operate, that they're spending a ton of time rushing the passer, trying to get to the passer, whether it be stunts, pass rush, blitzes, and Nielsen's running all this. And it's interesting to me. I mean, it's something that needs to be talked about in my estimation, because you would think anyway, this is a D coordinator's type deal, but yet we've got a special assistant running it. And I've told Joe this, I've told you this, if we're going to go ahead and draft long, twitchy, penetrating style of defensive linemen and undersized linebackers that can run and get downhill and shoot gaps, well, by God, can we not call plays and play that way? Why are we sitting back? So it's interesting. I think we got Nielsen coming in, teaching these things, scheme, matching talent. Might be a little bit of a blueprint of where this team's going defensively.
Yeah, it feels like a very intentional progression. I mean, even last year, the Bills in the postseason against Baltimore and Kansas City, their two most important games of the year, they played a ton of man coverage, right? Like 40% man coverage rate, which would have been towards the top of the NFL if that was what they played all season long. And you see the Bills very intentionally get more athletic with their draft choices in the secondary, in particular with Jordan Hancock and Maxwell Hairston. And you think about, well, okay, Rasul Douglas is out, and you get way more athletic with Maxwell Hairston. And you think about Jordan Hancock, and maybe he elevates the Cam Lewis role with a bigger, more athletic guy. And so it feels like they want to take the air out of it a little bit more. The Bills are horrible at defending quick game and short passes. In fact, I think I have those numbers. The Bills were 25th in EPA against passes under 10 air yards and number 23 in EPA per pass that came out in under 2.5 seconds. They gave up 3.8 average yards of separation per target, 28th in the NFL last year. Like, they got crushed. They got death by a billion paper cuts, and it happened for sure. And so, well, what do? You adjust, right? We got to take the air out of this. There's too much space against our defense. We got to get home quicker, and we have to have less space available, even if it means you're putting your players in more vulnerable situations. Like, you got to force the issue, because teams are answering the challenge of, we'll run 10, 11, 12 plays. That's fine. We'll do it. We know there's going to be space. And so I think they're making a really good pivot. I think all of the coaching adjustments to this point have kind of signaled this more force the issue style defense. And the metrics last year plainly bear out the challenge that the Bills had. Let me give you some numbers here on stunts. The Bills stunted 20% of the time last year, 128 dropbacks with stunts, 512 without stunts. The passer rating with a stunt against went from 95 down to 84. The sack rate doubles. The turnover-worthy throw percentage goes up by 2%. The pressure rate goes up by 15%. And the pressure rate over expectation goes up by 14%. Like, the Bills were so much better when they stunted. Now, this isn't a situation where you say, oh, you were really good doing this 20% of the time, so if you do it 60% of the time, everything's the same, right? There's a timing piece of all of this, right. But there's definitely an emphasis here, and I think it's the right emphasis to maximize where things went well and minimize where they didn't last year.
One guy I want to ask you guys about, we're watching, the James Cook saga happened. Joey Bosa, who had the calf strain and is working through it. There's some video of him running at camp, and that was cool. And maybe you follow Thigh Doctor on Twitter, said if he's running this well, the calf strain can't be that serious. That's the best I can do is, Twitter doctors that I trust a little bit. But Bosa said, it's exciting. No more outside linebacker. I'm ready to get my hand back in the dirt, get back to the 6 technique and rush the passer. So he's talking about that. How does that fit with everything you guys are talking about here for Bosa, hoping to kind of recapture what he's been?
I think it says it all. I mean, this is a guy who made his money, made his living with his hand on the dirt, and we're trying to turn him into an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. It just doesn't work. And for the listeners that don't understand what a 6 technique is, that is head up on a tight end. That is what that is. That is basically mash a tight end, mash a tackle, and get after it. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is a guy, an older dude. You can go ahead and simplify what he does, get him doing, the things he does well, and let him go eat. So I didn't realize that, Joe. I didn't realize he was playing a bunch of stand-up in Los Angeles.
Yeah, they've been kind of an odd front team, and he'd play, kind of a rush linebacker role, right. Him and Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu. That was kind of the role he played. And I would say, when I watched a lot of these players, Ogunjobi's another one, Hoyt, of course, Bosa as well. All of these guys came from more odd front defenses where they're playing, even Ogunjobi's playing wider alignments, and you're seeing, Hoyt, obviously a very unique player, and Bosa, they're playing these stand-up roles where their roles are going to be really different in Buffalo, and I kind of think they're tailored better for what those guys do.
Some people think that being in a 2-point stance or standing up gets you off the ball quicker, but not necessarily. And a guy like Bosa that's so explosive with his hand on the ground, that 3-point stance, his get off is what is your get off is what wins pass rush in my estimation. When you smother an offensive tackle with get off, and then you're dictating to him what you're going to do. It's a lot harder to have success rate as a pass blocker when that get off is so good. And Bosa obviously gets off the ball much better in a 3-point stance than a 2-point stance.
We're live on YouTube here on the Bill Squad Show. We are live on YouTube Mondays and Thursdays, 12 to 1. Bill's wrapping mandatory minicamp right now. Max Hairston did not practice today. He was out there observing, carrying a football as well. And this morning on WGR, Sal noted with us that he's always carrying a football. Is that a life hack to getting good ball skills? Just always have one with you at all time if you're a defensive back? Because as he's walking off the field today from minicamp, sure enough, he didn't practice. He's got a football. So he's getting his reps in one way or the other.
Yeah, and good news from Brandon Beane coming out saying that he tweaked his hamstring but should be fine for the start of training camp. So
all right,
that's good.
Exhale on Maxwell Hairston.
Exactly.
All right. When we return, we'll wrap up. We'll get some comments in. If you got any questions for us, we usually have open segment here for the final segment of the show to get your questions answered. So load them up in our YouTube feed. We also are going to point out that Bills fans are not the only ones that maybe freak out a little bit when one picture, one route, one thing from a minicamp pops online because a certain name in the league had his moment in the spotlight, maybe unfortunately. We'll get to that next on the Bill Squad Show. Mandatory minicamp wrapping up for the Bills, and by all accounts, things went pretty well. You know, Hairston with the injury, the hamstring injury, but you know, around the league, you're looking at minicamp reaction. And I was joking this week on WGR. We should offer championships for this. I saw one highlight where Cam Ward, not a highlight, but a breakdown. Cam Ward went 20 of 21 in a session. Like, hey, look out, Rookie of the Year 2021. It's minicamp championships, but there is one guy that has had a bit of a rough go, and that is one Deebo Samuel. I'm putting his picture up here on YouTube. You know, I think the reviews, guys, as he was running his routes in Washington camp, was he looked a little thick. Some said he might look more like a fullback than a wide receiver. So I don't know. Is there any cause for this? There's time to get in shape. It's only June.
It's the shiesty. The shiesty makes you adds 10 pounds.
This is the Eddie Lacy, Alshon Jeffrey.
Yes.
We've seen this movie.
Carlos Williams, former Bill.
You know, we'll always remember that rookie season. That guy, the touchdowns that guy scored was just absolutely incredible. Here's the thing about Deebo. Like he was pretty honest about weight issues, right? Like last year, I mean, he came in like with this renewed sense of like, I'm going to have my weight under control and have a good season. And even with the weight issues that he had last year, he still averaged over 8 yards after catch per reception. You know what they're going to do in Washington. If you watch Jaden Daniels in this Cliff Kingsbury offense, like it's get the ball out quick and into the hands of playmakers. And I mean, obviously Deebo is going to be at his best when he can run his fastest, but you know, he's talked about weight issues in the past and he still produced that yards after catch. I guess maybe he'll do the same thing, but you know, you don't want to see him that thick, right? Little extra goo. Little extra.
He's running against air, you know, it might have had an equipment guy throwing him the ball. It's not exactly, you know, live action. I'll get some comments in here. Bob writes in, if you're taking questions today, could you discuss the James Cook article by Kyle Krabs? So, Joe, you and Kyle Krabs do Locked On NFL Scouting.
Never heard of him, honestly.
Yeah. You guys do shows together. So what was it, Kyle, that had to say about James Cook regarding a lesson the Bills learned in the last couple of years? It was about the Diggs thing. Like they learned about life after Diggs, and maybe they would apply that to Cook as well.
Well, I think a lot of his article was rooted in the overall value that James Cook provides when it comes to snap counts, when it comes to fourth quarter run opportunities, when it comes to pass pro opportunities, right? It's kind of the limitations that we've been talking about that don't really add up to the type of back that gets the money that he is seeking. So I think Kyle aligns pretty closely with where I'm at, and he brought some pretty good data to the table and talked a lot about like yards before contact and, you know, how much James Cook kind of benefits from the environment around him, which I think is true. And I think he's most valuable to the Bills. And I think that's what makes it very tricky with this contract thing. I remember a guy like Randall Cobb. You remember him with the Packers, and like he was like optimized for the Packers, and he left and he got like big money, and then the next thing you know, he didn't really produce, and he finds his way back to Aaron Rodgers. Like I think there's some players that are just optimized where they are. I think that's true with James Cook, but obviously he's out there trying to get all the money he can.
Yep. Your herd mentality most recently was about Cole Bishop put together some big comprehensive stuff on Cole Bishop. So tell people how they can subscribe, sign up, and then what you dug into about Cole Bishop.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jeremy. Right now I'm working on a series over on the Herd Mentality Substack, where I'm going through some of the more polarizing players and their expectations for 2025. And so I've done Greg Rousseau, Ray Davis, and now Cole Bishop. And I have a bunch of other players that I want to get into where I want to find things that we can tangibly measure that I think are reasonable goals for them. And so today I released an article about Cole Bishop and talked about his journey and Sean McDermott's resume with safeties. And then I kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, what does he need to do this year for him to be on track as a second round pick? And so I kind of went through what I thought those things should be. And, I'm excited for Cole Bishop. I didn't love that he's banged up right now in OTAs, but I think the stage is set for him to have a nice season. I've liked the commentary that Babich and McDermott have had on him. And hopefully he can get that system down well enough that we can see that true skill set.
For sure.
Bishop is someone I like. One of the things you pointed out was the Bills, the way they develop their safeties, like the track record they have here, and how, they've shined up some diamonds in the rough, or maybe I wouldn't go that far, but like they've shined some guys up, I guess I would say. Like Taylor Rapp is not a high profile, high money safety, and he's played pretty well for them. DeMar Hamlin was kind of pressed into duty. Hayden Poyer. And for Bishop, it represents like their biggest investment there. It's almost like, should I get excited just because their track record of this position is so good? That's why when you did the top 10 most important Bills, like I ranked him pretty high just because I've got high hopes. I feel like, that track record of shining up safeties has hopefully it comes to fruition this year.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about Sean McDermott's track record of developing safeties, and some people are like, well, what are you talking about this track record? Well, let me tell you some things about Sean McDermott's track record developing safeties. And of course, Jeremy just pointed out Taylor Rapp, but like go back to Philadelphia. Quentin Michael was an undrafted free agent that started one game over his first 4 seasons. His first year with Sean McDermott as their DBs coach, he was an All-Pro. You go to Mike Mitchell in Carolina. It's a second-round pick by the Raiders. He started 9 games in 4 seasons. Comes to Carolina on a 1-year prove-it deal, $1 million contract. He's a week 1 starter, gets 4 picks, 4 sacks, 8 PBUs, 2 pass breakups, or 2 forced fumbles. Then he goes to Pittsburgh the next year and signs a 5-year, $25 million contract, which back in 2014 was a lot of money for a safety.
Yes.
Keon Coleman was a 2010 7th-round pick. Comes to Carolina in 2015. His 3rd team in 3 years. He's a Pro Bowler in year 1 under Sean McDermott. Jordan Poyer, we know, 2013 7th-round pick. Started 10 games in his first 4 seasons. We know what he did in Buffalo. Micah Hyde was a 5th-round pick that the Packers didn't offer a contract extension to. We know what he did in Buffalo. Their resume is off the charts, and none of these guys came in as a hand-selected 2nd-round pick that they tried to trade up for. So, like, that in and of itself gets me excited for where Cole Bishop can go, and obviously he'll have a chance to show us what he can do this year, hopefully.
Hopefully healthy to start training camp. One thing as again, we're live on YouTube, so if you're listening in the Locked On Bills channel, you can always watch us live. Brandon Beane speaking with the media at Bills camp today to wrap up minicamp says they expect everyone, all the injured players, to be good to go for the start of training camp. That includes Joey Bosa, he says has done very well. And then asked about James Cook. Just for old time's sake, let's dig in. Let's read between the lines on one comment, just for old time's sake. He said, I believe Jimbo will be ready to roll whether there's a deal or not. Is he opening the door for a deal? No. Okay.
I think he's opening the door to create an expectation that James Cook's going to be there ready to roll.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. To the comments, one more here. We've got Josh. Where is Jerry Ostrowski, who's the young man with the shiny face on the show today? Many pointing out.
I have to say, I feel like the drummer in ZZ Top right now. I feel like Frank Beard, who ironically has the last name Beard but doesn't have a beard in ZZ Top. So now it's summertime in Tulsa, man. Not conducive to a beard.
Heat,
so I had to go shave. Oh yeah, dude, heat's bad. It's already bad.
One more from Spin. What are we going to do to get Jerry to be a legend of the game?
I don't know,
question.
Man.
Let's go.
Question.
I'm not the guy who works at the flagship station in Buffalo for the Buffalo Bills.
Oh,
so.
they're not letting me on that field.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying you could very easily, between you and Joe,
start a movement.
Your brush stroke is wide, so yeah, you can start a movement.
Jerry Ostrowski, 67th all time in games played by the Buffalo Bills, 106 games, 102 starts, man.
Yeah, how
That
many of those
shocked me.
legends have a number below that? I would imagine a lot of a number below that.
You have the
right?
same amount of games played as Fred Jackson for the Bills.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
One less than Jordan Poyer. That's
The only
gotta
thing
bother you.
more shocking to me than your 988 shows a year is I actually am 67th on that list.
67th all time.
That's crazy.
Taron Johnson's coming for you this year. He's at 100.
Yeah, I know. I was more durable.
You
this
held
year,
off
but I still
Micah
got a
Hyde.
chance.
Micah Hyde, 95.
Really?
Matt Milano's at 94. So that's we'll see. We'll see if he
Wow.
can pull that off. Trey White's at 82. Epinesa 75. You're all right here. You're gonna be. It's exclusive company. How many people have signed a contract with the Bills? Only 75 of them have played 100 games. You're one of them.
Damn. That's pretty
All right.
crazy.
I'll start at legend.
And
of the game.
none of them have played more games at different spots than me.
No,
I'll take that title.
I have no, and I'll be honest with you, Jerry. I have emailed Pro Football Reference trying to get this validated. I'm pretty sure that you are the only player in NFL history that has multiple years as a team's primary starter at center, guard, and tackle. I think that's unprecedented. You might be the most versatile offensive lineman in NFL history. And you know how it is. Versatility normally keeps you on the bench. Not
Right.
Jerry. Not Jerry. This guy, 2 years at the center, 2 years as a guard, 2 years as a tackle? Unbelievable. Who's done it? Who's done it? I want to know who they are.
When you find out, please let me know.
I'm trying. I'm emailing people behind the scenes. I've been trying to get this answer for a while. Somebody answer me at Pro Football Reference, please.
I still don't know how it happened. I just kind of fell into it.
I don't know. It wasn't the RAS score, was it, Jerry?
One more. Bob writes in, Jerry's only 3 touchdowns behind Kincaid.
Oh, brother.
Is that true?
Boy.
Is that number right?
Yeah. So Jerry's been.
I'm 100% in the red zone, by the way.
100%. So Jerry comes and hangs out with us sometimes in the Discord channel on Wednesday nights. And the other week he was in there and I was just talking about his career. And I know that he scored a touchdown. And in fact, he scored a touchdown against the Chargers in an overtime win. And so we were asking Jerry to kind of talk us through the play. Maybe you should talk us. Why am I doing this? You scored a touchdown in the NFL. Why don't you tell people about it?
It wasn't real dramatic, man. It was,
when you celebrated, it felt dramatic.
Oh, well, when you score one in your entire career and you went from 7th grade to when you finally scored, yeah, I was going to spike that thing through the earth. But no, man, it was like I can't even remember what down it was. It was like 2nd down or something. We're on the 2-yard line, handed the ball off to Jonathan Linton, rubbed off the center or rubbed off the tackle up to the 2nd level and blocked the linebacker. And you heard the big ooh, which usually means something bad. And Linton fumbled the ball and he fumbled it forward. And I just kind of looked down and was like, oh, there's the football. Landed on it, as Joe said, in perfect form in the fetal position, covered up the tips, and scored a touchdown and celebrated with Eric Mold. So, yeah, the cool part is I told the guys last night, a really good friend of mine had a photographer friend who was at all the games. And she would tell the guy, one game a year to take pictures, and she would build these, collages or a picture of her. I've got that full deal in sequence, like 4 pics in a row framed up on the wall. So it's pretty cool experience. I got it memorialized for the rest of my life.
You have the
legendary spike.
You have the ball?
Oh yeah, it's right. It's about 2 feet behind me on the shelf.
Right. Very nice.
He crushed the spike.
Who went and got the ball post spike?
I can't remember because I spiked the hell out of it and then ran to the sideline. And Woody and Hojo, the equipment managers at the time, were freaking out. So they got it from somebody. It might have been E. Molds grabbed it, but they stuck it in. Of course, they put it in the back equipment box and then sent it off and got it all painted up and decorated. So yeah, I got the ball.
We're just glad you didn't break your back on that celebration, man. The guy leaned over big time. You saw the limbo picture, right, man? This guy, he had it was crazy bowing on the back there.
Hip flexibility, my man.
Unreal, man. You did all the offensive linemen proud with your celebration.
As Joe says, I recruited the lower half.
You did. You recruited
well.
Overtime win against the San Diego Superchargers.
That's right.
Did it at home,
That's
too.
right.
Very special moment.
It was cool.
Very cool. All right. That'll do it for us on the Bills Squad Show. We're back Monday. Of course, you can like and subscribe on the Locked On Bills channel, and please do so. Happy to have you with us. Thanks, everybody, for watching and commenting, and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Father's Day out there. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. U.S. Open this weekend, U.S. Open and Father's Day, one of my favorite traditions in all of sports. Like a Sunday final round U.S. Open is going to be great. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and go Bills.
Go
Much
Bills.
love. Go Bills.